Hi, my name is Yuva and I'm here today to talk about data providers in SeLion. So before proceeding further, we just covered the basics of how to use data provider given by TestNG for your test automation needs. In this tutorial, you'll be seeing about the data providers that are provided by SeLion which can be used in your test automation. So let's get started. So before moving further, let's understand why. Why does SeLion offer you data provider? The first thing is it separates test and the data. So whenever you're supplying a data to the test method, there is a scenario wherein your use case grows and so the data. So instead of having the entire data within the data provider method, you can move all the data to a file and can read the data from the file into your data provider and pass it to the test method. So it separates the data, and with the help of data providers in CLine, you have a handy utility to get this done easily. Second thing is it is compatible with TestNG. So whatever data providers you use, it can be specified with the at data provider annotation provided by TestNG. And it is not only specific to a single file, there are different types of data providers to choose, which we'll be seeing shortly. Second thing is, so whenever you read data, there's always a requirement wherein you'd like to filter the data. So you can also apply the filter on the data that is read if you're using data providers provided by CLine. So what are the types of data providers? So first thing is we have an Excel data provider which uses the Excel file, and a YAML data provider which uses the YAML file, a XML data provider, and a JSON data provider. So when we offer you types, all the data providers adhere to a contract, which means all the data providers implement the CLine data provider. So this means whenever you decide to switch data, for example, you might be using a YAML data provider and you want to switch to JSON, the methods still remain intact. Only thing is you need to change the file and a minimum amount of editing in your test script to use the data provider. And you can still apply the filter because we have given the filter as a plug and play mechanism for ease of use. So this is how the filtering mechanism looks in data provider. So we have the data providers which read the data from the file, and there is a filter which you can use to apply on the data and filter it as per your needs. CLine provides a couple of default filters which you can use. If you feel that are insufficient, you can always write your own filter and plug it to CLine. So let's have a checkpoint. So data providers help you to supply data to a test method by reading it from a file and applying the filter as you need. So the first thing is decide the data provider as per your need. And the second thing is outline the data in the file as per the requirement. The third thing is you can choose the way the data needs to be read. By way, I mean that you can read all the data, you can specify indexes for the data. And the last one is after reading the data, if you decide to apply any filter on the data, you can still get that done. So what are the know-hows? So this is the CLine data provider interface which provides you all these methods such as get all data, get data by filter, where you can pass your own filter, and followed by get data by index, get data by keys, and get data as hash table. All the data providers in CLine follows this contract, which allows you to switch between data providers easily. So let's have a demo. So the demo I'm going to show is for the JSON data provider. So this is my sample JSON file. So this JSON file contains a array of JSON data. For example, my scenario here is I'm going to test a request which is of JSON format, and I just can't outline all my JSON data inside my test scripts. It'll actually make my test script huge and also less readable. So what I did is I have specified all my JSON data in a JSON file in this format, array of JSON data, and I have used this JSON data inside my test automation using the JSON data provider implementation provided in SeLion. So how do I use that? First step, I'll be writing a data provider annotation so that test engine will be able to supply the data to a test method. Inside the iSupply data method, I'm pointing it to a file system resource. And the important thing here is I am mapping the JSON data to a simple Java class. So this Java class is a straight mapping of the JSON data. For example, I have name, password, account number, amount, area code, and the user information contains name, password, account number, and amount. So that whenever we read it, the JSON data provider parses the JSON file and maps the data to the user information class. So I'm passing the resource to the data provider factory. So this will deduce the type of the file and return a JSON data provider implementation. And I'm reading all the data for now. So inside my test method, which is called use data provider, I have outlined the data provider name as JSON data provider, and the data which I'm going to accept is user information. Please note that I am mapping this JSON data to a user information class. So whatever data returned here will be of the type user information. And so my parameter here is user information. So let me run this. So I had three data. So there are three tests run and the details of the data are present here. Now anything which I want to read from this user information, I can read it via this user object through the accessor methods or the getter methods. Okay, so I don't want all three data. I just want the first data. And if that is the case, I can call the data provider get data by index that will return a 2D object array, and I am casting it to user information, and I am printing the data. The rest of the steps of mapping the file system resource and passing the resource to the data provider remains the same. So if I run this now, I read only one data, which is a first index. Again, now I've read the entire data, but I want the uh, person to details to be filtered out of the data which I've read. So in this case, I'll be using a filter. So CLine provides simple inclusion filter and custom key filter. Simple inclusion filter allows you to filter data by index. The custom key filter takes in any key value pairs and it will filter the data. The other index is filter is simple index inclusion filter. Sorry, not simple inclusion filter, simple index inclusion filter. So let me run this. Now if you see, only the person to data will be out of. So similarly, you can filter the data as per the account number or the type of the account as per your need. So that was the demo on JSON data provider, and the next demo which I'll be showing is about the Excel data provider. So the Excel data provider will look for data in a Excel sheet and it will parse the data and it will pass it on to the data provider, which can be again passed to the test data via test automation needs. So there are a couple of things I'll be going through in this video as part of demoing the Excel data provider. The first one is Sheet name should map to class name and adding the custom type. We'll see a practical walkthrough of what it means. So this is my simple data-driven test that uses the mydatafile.xls, and this is my Excel sheet specifying the row number, the employee ID, and the employee name in a sheet name called simple data. And I have another sheet name called custom data, which specifies the serial number, the employee name, and the country. So let's see how to use this data inside the test method. So first thing is, as usual, as part of the data provider, we'll be outlining the file system resource, and this file system resource will be passed on to the data provider, and I'm just reading all the data. So the specific thing to note here is I have a I want the data to be mapped to a class called the simple data. This simple data contains employee ID and the employee name. So the things one specific thing to note here is the name of the Java class which you want to map the data should be same as the sheet name. Otherwise, the Excel data provider will not be able to locate the specific sheet and read the data. So now I have specified the same name here, and the data is in the mydatafile.xls. So it will again return a type called simple data, which I am asserting it to a couple of conditions here. So if I run this now, so again there are three datas. It is eventually read, and the asserts are passed. So um, the simple data in this case contains the type specified by Java. What if I have another custom type, for example, a country name or a area information, some Java class that is specific to a type? Then Excel data provider will not be able to parse it. To allow it to pass some custom data, we should tell to the Excel data provider or add the custom type to the Excel data provider so that it will map the data accordingly. So let's see a simple example for that. We first enable this, and again I'm using the same data file, but this time I'm referring to a sheet called custom data. So if you look at this sheet here, it outlines the employee name and the country. Here the country is my custom type, which maps to a enum from where I'll be mapping the raw string to a enum name. So the difference to note here is after I associate the resource to the data provider, I am telling to SeLion that I have a country class, and I am going to call the method getCountry in that, and I'm associating this type to a class called default custom type with the method I want to call. And finally, I am adding this or registering this custom type to the current data provider in use. So let me revisit the steps. After I associate the file resource to the data provider, I am specifying or I'm telling to CLion that I'm going to load a custom type here, and I associate the custom type to the default custom type class provided by CLion, and I'm registering it with the data provider. Once that is done, I am reading the data by index and I'm printing it. So let's see what happens. So if you notice this closely, it has read the data from index 1, and here I have passed the US as string. Internally, this got mapped to the enum name United States. So this is one way of associating the custom data with the data provider. So this gives the flexibility for a user or an engineer to associate any type of data to the Excel sheet and have a corresponding class in the test automation and register that class with the data provider, which can then be used to read and map the data. So that's all about the Excel data provider. If you're looking for more information on other data providers, you can take a look at the documentation at http://cline.io. We have a specific section for CLine data providers and also for the specific types called YAML, Excel, XML, and JSON data providers, and a specific section for data provider filters too. Not only this, the archetype contains s- samples related to the data providers like data driven with custom types, simple data driven test, data driven with selective row test, and YAML powered data driven test. You can go through these examples to understand more about using data providers and choosing the best one for your test automation needs. So thank you for watching. I hope this video tutorial was helpful in making you understand the CLion data providers. For more information, you can always visit http://cline.io. If you have any doubts, you can post it to our forum.